You're listening to The Psychedelic Couch. Before we delve into today's episode, which includes conversation around psychedelics, we want to remind our listeners that the use of illicit drugs carries significant risks and legal consequences. Psychedelic substances, including but not limited to LSD, psilocybin, DMT and MDMA, are classified as illegal in many countries, including here in the UK. The possession, distribution and consumption of these substances can result in legal penalties, including fines and imprisonment. Furthermore, the use of psychedelics can have profound effects on one's mental and physical health. While some individuals report positive experiences, such as expanded consciousness and therapeutic benefits, others may experience negative effects, such as anxiety, paranoia, and psychosis. These substances can also interact unpredictably with medications and exacerbate underlying mental health conditions. They are also not suitable for anyone under the age of 25. It's essential to approach the topic of psychedelics with caution and responsibility. The views and experiences shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be interpreted as encouragement or advocacy for the use of illegal substances. If you or someone you know is struggling with substance abuse, we encourage you to seek support from qualified healthcare professionals or local addiction support services. With that said, let's proceed with today's episode, keeping in mind the importance of informed discussion and harm reduction. Welcome, Katka. Thank you for coming on the show today. Just want to introduce you and tell everyone a bit about your work. So Katka Jacz is a seasoned breathwork facilitator, complemented by her extensive trainings in various schools of yoga and meditation. Her journey into this field was catalysed by significant traumatic events, which ignited a profound commitment to spiritual exploration and healing. Navigating through the challenges of her own healing process, Katka has found solace and insights on her path. Despite the difficulties encountered along the way, her journey has been characterised by invaluable lessons and inspiration. Currently residing in The Hague, Katka extends her expertise in breathwork facilitation to both individual and group settings. With her compassionate guidance and wealth of experiential knowledge, she welcomes individuals to embark on their own transformative journey towards healing and self-discovery. We are delighted to welcome you this morning, Katka. Thank you so much for coming on today to share your wisdom and experience.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claire. It's super nice to be here. I'm excited actually to have this talk and to do this with you. So super nice. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Great. Yeah. So maybe we could start by, you could explain what breathwork is.
Well, actually, it's nice because breathwork, it's already in the smallest thing. So breathwork is a practice with manipulation of the breath to create a different state of being. So you can already think about, like, for example, if you have to speak in front of a big group and you get a little nervous and you feel that your breath goes up, or you feel small, or you feel your belly gets contracted. This creates like a big sensation of that you feel small. And already if you can manipulate the breath to create a different state. So you can relax, let go of the belly, bring your breath down towards your belly. And it already creates, like, even thinking about it now, I feel my body already relaxing and opening up. So that's already a tiny thing of breath work, what we can use during the day or during our daily lives. And the breath work, what I use is more the connected breathing technique. And it's a bigger thing. It's really a session what I do with, in group settings or one-on-one. And it's more of at least an hour that we really work with the breath. We manipulate the breath. We create a circle with the breath. And with that, we can touch deeper layers of the body and deeper layers of stored emotions and traumas and things which are stored in the body. Like, I'm convinced that all the experiences we have and what we encounter during our lives, it gets somewhere stuck in the body. We're not like, you have the animals, even the dogs or in wildlife, that the animals, they encounter a situation which is scary, or that they feel nervous about or they're actually life-threatening. And as soon as that situation is past, they kind of shake it off, right? It's what they do. And with that, they let go of all these emotions and they create a neutral state of being again, a new balance. And unfortunately, we humans, we don't do that. So we kind of, yeah, we keep these emotions with us, these thoughts, right? And it gets stuck. And I think that without like breath work or different kinds of work, some things and some emotions, they get stuck, and we can actually get sick from some stuff which just stays in the body. And so with the breath work we do, or what I do, what I guide, is that we manipulate the breath and we create a circle, and with that we get into different states of being, and then we can touch these deeper layers, these stored emotions, and release that actually, and well, create a freer being actually.
Gosh, there's so much that you said there, and touching on a few of the points, right at the beginning, the idea that, we naturally use the breath to regulate. So I'm thinking, in EMDR, in the EMDR protocol, in that early preparation stage, really using the breath to be able to calm, regulate the system, bring the system into kind of parasympathetic drive, so that the breath just calms, it stabilizes, it grounds. And what you were saying about animals, I was thinking about Peter Levine's work, how he talks about, again, that animals will go into, if there's a life or death experience with a lion chasing an antelope, it will, if it survives, it will run off and kind of shake it out, and it's processed very quickly, it's out of its system. And we've lost that, right? And maybe, in years gone by, indigenously, we would have done that. We would have sat around the campfire. We would have talked about, the being chased by the bear or whatever it was that happened, and we would process. Whereas now we're not doing that. So it stays stored, and, the lion has become your boss, or your relationship with social media or emails. Every time an email pings, it's that kind of fight or flight response that we're getting. And we don't have that time to get it out of our system.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And it's exactly that. And that's why so many things are actually stored in the body. And you can imagine like your whole life already from a child on, and you don't have the ways, or you don't have the practice to work with these emotions or thoughts or sensations or everything what's there. It gets stored, and we create patterns of being and reactions based upon these stored emotions, or these things which are in the body. So that's from where we very often react. We react straight away, like in a situation, we straight away, instead of just letting it be and maybe thinking, contemplating a little bit, maybe for a split second, instead of straight away that reaction. Many of us are kind of trapped. They don't feel that free being of what's underneath it all.
So tell us a little bit then about, a typical breathwork session. What does that look like?
It's actually the breathwork, it has different states. So first of all, what we do usually before we start the breathwork is that we have a little conversation and intake. What's there? What's on your mind? What you want to work on? Are there specific things? So to have an intention to go into the breathwork. We always, at least you can do it in different ways, but what I really like is to do it on a mattress, so that you're laying down and we breathe through our open mouth. And the breath, you guide your breath all the way down to your lower belly. And then we take out the natural stops between the inhalation and the exhalation. And so we inhale and you exhale straight away. And then, well, you create a circle, right? Normally what happens is that people first, they're really working with the breath. So to get a certain pace, they really make it deep. And that takes some time. It takes some time to actually get into the groove, into the pace, to feel the breath, what's happening. And because, well, like I just said already in the beginning, if you're aware of your breath, you can also feel what's happening in the body. So you feel straight away with guiding breath all the way down and using that whole body for your breath, things are shifting already in the body. So it takes a little bit, like the first 10 minutes or something, to really get into that pace, into the groove, into how it feels. And then there are certain emotions coming up already, like resistance, or you feel some kind of contractions in the body. And after that, usually the clients, they kind of let go of that controlled way of breathing. It's still in that circle, but they don't have to think about it anymore that much. And then if they can let go a little bit, then the different emotions start. Like they open the body a bit more. And what's happening is that the control mechanism what we have in our brain, the neocortex, that's the moment where we can bypass, or we start to bypass our control mechanism. And that creates space. And in that space, we can really touch deeper layers, go into different states of being. We create actually space between the body and all these sensations and emotions. And that's when the magic happens. That's when start to release, and physical sensations start, or emotions, grief, anger, all these things. And that takes, like, the real breath work takes about 45 minutes. And more or less, it really depends how we want to build, or what we do in the breath work. And after the hard work, then the integration starts. That's where the normal breath is picked up again. And then usually so many things happen, because that's when the body comes back, and you really need to have a moment to rebalance again, because lots have happened. And that's the moment when many insights can come up or release, or so that's actually the whole hour. And after that hour, people feel like a different person.
So in essence, by using the breath, you're increasing the oxygenated blood, you're altering the brainwave patterns, you're heightening the sensory experience, and the combination of that allows you to kind of connect into the system's intuitive healing ability, and their memories will come up, or particular experiences or insights, guidance in some way. But it's through that combination that we're able to really connect to that inner healing intelligence that we all have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually what's happening is that normally in the waking life, we're kind of so connected, with the body, the thoughts, the emotions, sensations, everything's kind of stuck, usually like this. And then during the breath work, we create actually space. We create space between the body, between the sensations, so there is space to have different insights, and different pathways, different neurological pathways are actually being made there. And so the awareness is expanded, and so we're not that stuck anymore. And that creates so much more space to have some kind of spiritual, new, creative way of thinking. And that's when the healing really happens. And also the parasympathetic nervous system gets activated. And so you create a whole different state of being from openness. Like you say, is that the intuitive or the healing mechanism, what we all have, that's actually starts to happen, starts to activate.
It activates it naturally, I guess.
Yeah. So we don't really have to do anything for it.
And are there any sort of common experiences that you've noticed that people have? Any particular, I don't know, their patterns of experiences or sensations, or that you could tell us about?
Yeah, it's very interesting. There are some common sensations, what happens, especially when people start with the breath work. After a few minutes, you already feel the sensations, the tingling sensations in the body, in the fingers, in the toes, and also around the mouth, the face. So those are the first few signs that things are shifting. Is that Because what we do is that we have our natural blood balance between the CO2, the O2, what's happening. And then because we're creating the circle, it's like almost, well, people who start, for example, I've never seen it, but people who start hyperventilating, it's really that they start to create a circle, but up here in the chest. And they start that it's more the panicking way. And there's actually no space to calm down. So they're breathing but it's panicking. But what we do with this circle of breath work is that we do create that circle. However, it's controlled and it's lower in the belly. But it does stir up the blood balance what we normally have. So there's different ways. So the body needs to adjust to that. And so all these first sensations, all these tinglings, it's also because of that. It's because the body is working, there's a different balance. Also with that, so what I said before, we can start bypassing the neocortex. And then also these sensations start to happen more. So the first things is really these sensations, the tingling, the warm sensations. Sometimes it's really cold, so that you never know what you're going to get. So that's also very interesting. Also, what I see is that sometimes hands can be cramped up, which is really not comfortable. It can be quite painful, actually.
Well, does it pass? Is it something that people experience at the beginning, and then does it pass if you stay with it? Does it move? Does it change?
Yeah. Well, it does actually, but instead of some people want to go through it, so they push it with their muscles actually to try to release it, but that doesn't work. So usually just by breathing and guiding your breath towards these cramps, that might help. And sometimes it just dissolves during the breath, during the session. What I also see is that usually people who start with breath work and after a few sessions, it just doesn't happen anymore. So I don't know, people get used to actually this way of our different state.
So as this processing is happening and almost unfurling, what role does the facilitator play? I mean, how engaged or how active are you in the process?
Yeah, well, I think I am very fond of letting the process happen. However, I think my role or the facilitator's role is very important, because to hold the space, also to be able to guide someone through these sensations and emotions, because they're really, we can touch really, really deep things there, really deep, like you can touch big traumas. There can be very vivid images. So clients often go through quite some deep stuff. So I think as a facilitator, and I can also see sometimes clients, they unconsciously don't want to go into that deeper layer, or they actually do, but they don't. And we can really guide that. So I can see what's happening with the breath in the body. I can see what they do with the body, and I can guide them through. So what I use during these sessions is that I also use touch. There are some pressure points in the body what I can really use to go into or guide someone into the deeper layers. And I also use energy work to help, also to guide someone through. And what I also use sometimes is toning, that I ask a person to create a sound. And that also, like that vibration can also stir up the body a bit, and that can create the flow, or to deblock certain things in the body. I think the facilitator's role is actually very important, and one of the biggest ones, I think, is really to support and to hold the space.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of integration, do you work with the clients afterwards, or do you recommend that they're doing other psychotherapy or somatic body work? Or is it something that people tend to do in isolation? I'm just thinking, if big trauma is touched and starting to process in the session, what happens after? How are they held after?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I really think that breath work And for example, therapy, normal therapy, can be very complementary. I think with words we can reach certain layers, but I think with breath work and using the body, we can actually get into deeper layers and start rewiring also. And I think it's very important also as a facilitator. I am not a therapist. I do work as a coach, but these bigger things, I always tell my clients to also find a therapist or someone who is really capable of guiding someone through that process. But I really think we can work together. I work as a coach, so I do know certain things. So I can absolutely guide people through certain layers. But to get really to the deeper stuff, I think it's very wise to have another therapist or someone who is really specialized. So I really love to work with someone else or to be able to recommend someone.
Yeah, to hold both. Well, I know that some practitioners incorporate specific breathwork techniques such as holotropic breathwork or rebirthing breathwork into sessions. How do these techniques differ, or how are they similar? There's lots of types of breathwork. Maybe you could tell us a bit about.
So there are different techniques, and most people are using parts of the connected breathing though. And so we have the rebirthing, for example, of Leonard Orr, who is working. Actually, mostly the technique is more up in the upper chest, and the idea behind it is that they're looking into the birth trauma and how it's expressed, or how the emotional patterns in the present moment are connected to that. So that's a part, but still he's also using the connected breathing technique only on the upper part of the body. And then we have also the holotropic technique of Stanislas Grof, which is also a beautiful one, but it has a little bit of a different technique where he creates chaos first in the breath. And afterwards, still all these techniques are there to get into different states of being and to work with the self-healing process of the body. And I really think that connected breathing, what I use, is very wide and profound as well. And well, what I just said is that I also use the pressure points and the toning. And I think these things are a little bit less common in the other, with the types we just mentioned.
You mentioned Stan Grof. Maybe you could tell us a bit about the history of breathwork.
Well, it's beautiful. I really like Stanislav Grof. He's a very interesting psychotherapist
And psychiatrist as well, yeah.
Psychiatrist. He was really into the breath work in a way where he was also checking altered states of being and what that does, or how you can use the breath to get into different states of being. He was a very interested in these altered states, actually. So that's why he really did a lot of research. He also used lots of psilocybin, though, and
LSD. So when I think I'm right in thinking that when the war on drugs sort of took hold and these substances were made illegal, breathwork or holotropic breathwork was a way to be able to induce those states, so to be able to carry on the therapeutic work that he had been doing so well with the LSD, to create a space using breath that we can go in and process and connect to the unconscious and to have these mystical experiences.
Yeah, exactly. I just there was a beautiful documentary with him that he was telling that he was, well, that was especially with all these LSD, and that he was sitting with so many people just checking what their states were, where they are, what they were doing, and that all before he actually did a session himself. So he did so much research before, and then at one point he was able to actually go through it himself. So he knew already so much about it. So it's actually a very interesting way of doing it, because most people with breath work, for example, me, I started it because I had some issues and traumas and things I wanted to work with. So I went through the process myself, and now I'm actually guiding these because I knew that it helped me so much.
Would you be willing to share a little more about your journey?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. I've been interested in the psyche and how we people work actually for a very long time. Already as a child, I was thinking or researching for myself then, like, what are thoughts? What is it? How does it work? How is it possible that if I get into a room, I feel all these sensations? So I was always working with these things. So, and I started doing my yoga somewhere when in my 20s, and I was interested in different states of being, and I felt like, okay, this yoga, this works for me in my body. And then after I did have some traumatic experiences where unfortunately I lost two babies actually in a premature birth, and that created like a big contraction in my body. And I noticed that at that time I couldn't even do my yoga practice because I was stuck. I was just stuck in my body. I was doing my life, and I thought I was okay, but in my body I felt stuck, and I felt small. And so at one point I thought, okay, I have to do a little bit more about this. And then breath work came on my path. And because the breath, it's something what we're doing it the whole day, right? Breathing. It's we have it all the time with us. And already to create, to manipulate the breath, to expand or get a little bit of space in the body, it was already so much. It opened my system, and gradually I could move through these traumatic events again. And the breath work really opened my body, and I suddenly felt also the pain in my body and the grief. And so, and it took a while. I had to really go through it, but then I could also suddenly move my body into different yoga poses again, because I just couldn't. I couldn't do these heart openings anymore. I was just I thought like, oh, I don't have the my muscles aren't working, I'm not strong enough to do these poses. But it wasn't that. It was just like the emotions which were stored in the body. So when I realized, or actually when yeah, it wasn't easy because I had to go through the two losses again, and the two, because it happened twice. So it wasn't one thing. So I had to go through one birth and to go through the other birth. And then, well, there was a big thing, and then I had to, like, all these other things which were connected to it. And the breath work, well, it wasn't easy because I kept on seeing, I had these images, but it also created different insights. And it created, at one point, I know every time I had to cry so much, but every time I came out of my session, I felt that I just a tiny bit, I let go again. And I felt like a new person, and I felt lighter, and I felt the space in my body, and that I could breathe again. And well, of course, it wasn't just one session, but it really helped to see the world in a different way again.
To start peeling off the layers, almost like an onion, peeling off the layers of those experiences and how they connect to other challenging experiences, to really allow you to feel vibrancy again, or to feel connected in the world. It's almost how you described it. There was a closing off, there was a constriction. And by using the breath and by processing in that way, kind of really reconnecting to the body.
Yeah.
Over what sort of time period? I'm curious, and what regularity were you doing the breathwork sessions?
So in the beginning, I really needed to have time to process, as lots of emotions, and I got the images back again. So I had to go through that, and I really needed time to get my body settled again. And after a while, I noticed that the biggest fear for the emotions, I think I already worked through it. So the pain wasn't that big anymore. So it felt like something had been healed and that I could go through different layers. So I really felt, and I felt that I had so much confidence. I really felt the changes in my body. So it was an intrinsic motivation to really move forward and to go through it and to touch deeper layers of the body, or deeper layers of the trauma. Actually, I felt that my body needed it because I was healing, I was going through the process, and I could move and I could do more. So it wasn't out of from the mind. It was really that my body was telling me, yeah, I can actually feel this grief, or I can feel this, the anger. I really went through these emotions, through these different phases. So it also felt good to actually be able to do something with it. And it took some time before, but then I really felt that I could go through it. And afterwards, after the more intense period of the more frequent sessions, I after that I felt like, okay, now it's time to give my body a rest again. I mean, still, it will eventually, all the emotions, I think it will never disappear. I mean, these things. So in the sessions, what I do now, I still have images and I still feel pain and grief, but it's so different than how it used to be.
And it doesn't sound dissimilar to the work that I do with EMDR. What you're doing as you process through the trauma, the level of distress starts to decrease. So a client might report, a particular connection to a particular memory or event being a 10 out of 10 for distress. And you can reduce it down. Of course, when death has, or really tragic events have taken place, that might never be a 0. But the level of distress in the body is right down. It might just be a baseline 1 or 2, and that's okay because of the nature of what happened. But the relationship to it is very different. And rather than it feeling really close, really intense, really visceral, it reduces. And that experience often in the body that it's not there, that there's peace. So you can hold that experience or connect to that memory and still remain calm and settled in the body.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, you say it actually very beautifully, because that's exactly how it is. In the beginning, it was all connected. The grief, the pain, the thing, it was my body, my whole body was cramped up. And during the work I did, it created space in between. So now I can really feel, I can still feel pain, and like that there's lots of tears and I really have to move through it, but there's a difference in the body. So it's not all one big ball of difficult emotions. So it's like you say, I feel like, yes, I can cry, and I feel, of course, my heart has pain, but it's so different.
I really like the way you describe that space. It's a different reaction, a different moment. I remember once hearing about, working with someone who saw a person in a restaurant who looked similar to their attacker, and noticing that the response was so different, that actually seeing it, acknowledging a similar appearance, but noticing the body remain calm, that there was this space which was so different to how things had been historically. It's held within the system in a different way.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what we do if we look at the breathwork session, and we get into these altered states, or in a different state of being. What happens is that we have that space, it creates space. And that's when it's actually a rewiring. There's a reorganization of the neurological pathways, and that creates the healing. So that's actually what happens during the session. So you create that space where not everything is so connected, and then new wires are actually made, and that creates the calm state where we can be in, because we're calm and we're through it. Even though we still have a situation happening. So it's that self-healing mechanism of the body what's being activated during these sessions. And that's with a rewiring of the system.
And maybe I'll share an incredible experience that I had with you in a breathwork session once. So when I've had some wonderful breathwork experiences, but as you were speaking, I was thinking that perhaps it's worth sharing this experience where Having spent probably 6 months doing quite a lot of energy center meditations, really focusing on opening the chakras during meditation, it felt in this particular session with you that all of them unlocked and that I had this incredible energy flowing all the way through, up through the body. It came in waves. It was, I can only describe as a full body orgasm, this sort of ecstatic state, these waves of just bliss. It was extraordinary. And what's been interesting is how that has felt afterwards, that, really connecting with one system. I suppose a heightened awareness of sensitivity of sensation, feeling the wind and just feeling the bliss and the beauty of that. So something's happened to kind of connect all of that in a way that, I don't know, I hadn't realized before that needed to be connected, but it's been fascinating actually seeing how the unveiling in that session has really carried on actually through the weeks and months after.
Wow, beautiful. So yeah, so you still feel the difference, right? Before the session and now.
So I can easily, and I was doing it, as I said, in these meditations, feeling the different chakras moving up, but it now feels so much more connected. So if I was to breathe into different parts or different centers in my body, I can do so really easily now. It just naturally flows. There's a sort of flow. I mean, is that unusual? Have you experienced other people having those sorts of...
Actually, this is a beautiful session you had, I have to say. Of course, what happened in your case is that you deblocked actually certain things and you created a new flow. And in your case, it was really because you were, of course, working as you already had your specific meditations and stuff. So it's not weird that these things happen. So you create a new flow, so new pathways which are being activated, or which were activated and which are still open. So these things with the breath work is that you can really have a permanent change. You open something and you create new ways of being. So I really loved your experience because it was very open with the full body, and it was amazing to see and to guide you through that. And yeah, well, I had beautiful experiences with also a woman who was all about the harmony in her family, and she wanted, like, everything had to be perfect. And then during this session she started shaking and she suddenly started to make noise, and she really wanted her voice to be heard. It took at least 20 minutes for her to really, like, get her voice, like, out in the open, like screaming and using her voice to let herself be heard. And her body was moving in a way also to get that flow through and to really open her throat and her chest. And it was amazing to see. And afterwards she shared that just before, she had a very vivid image of her grandmother, how her grandmother was being, well, so she wasn't allowed to use her voice, and she was really, so she apparently she took that in her own life. So she was actually, well, still having that experience of her grandmother in herself. And now she could finally open up, and I could see her whole body taking much more space through these 20 minutes of like opening up. And I actually just spoke to her a few weeks ago, and that she said, yeah, in her family, everyone had to get used to her, that she finally could say, like, no, I want it in a different way, or that the harmony wasn't, still she wanted harmony, but still also she needed different things now. So it changed her whole life, which is really amazing.
Wow.
To see. Yeah, it was so cool. So all these things, they happen. And so she also said that she wants to come back because she's curious what else can happen. So I also told her, well, you never know what you're going to get. And apparently, well, this session for her was really about opening up and really to set herself here in this world and to let herself be heard, which was really beautiful.
And do you, if someone is new to breathwork or wants to start exploring it, how would you recommend they find, as you said, there's lots of different practices. How can they find the right practice for them? Where's the best way to find a facilitator?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. Nowadays, you can do it's easy to just do a course and to start your practice. So I find it actually very important to do some research and to really find someone with whom you feel safe. And because with breath work, of course, you need a good guidance, but it's also things already happen, especially when some stuff is already on the surface, and you're working through it. You need to have someone who can help you, guide you through it, and maybe already went through some stuff, him or herself, that they know what can happen. And it's really important that you feel, or the client, or that you really feel safe, and that you know that you can express yourself, that you can let your body move the way it wants to move, that you really feel safe to explore and to go into these different layers. So I think many people actually offer intakes or free intakes, or I think it's very wise to look for someone on the internet and do a little bit of research, maybe call, maybe to hear the voice already, so that you know that you want to go deeper.
Yeah, so are there precautions and considerations that people should really think about before embarking on this, knowing that we might go to hidden places?
Yeah, exactly. You go to hidden places, and there are also some indications, like if you just had surgery, or like, there are different things. And so it's very important also to share a little bit about your medical history, or that how you feel, or what the things are what you're working with now. So there are some precautions which you can take, and especially I think it's very important that you share these with the facilitator beforehand, so that the facilitator also can say, okay, sorry, this is not my expertise, I cannot help you here, maybe you can go to my colleague, or to someone else. Breath workers, usually they have it on their website, what are the contraindications. I think I think it's very important that you mention it beforehand.
And is breath work an option for people where something like psychedelics isn't suitable?
Yeah, I would say it is, especially because with breath work, you're always aware. So you don't have to take anything in. You're just working with the breath as it is now, or you're manipulating a little bit. As a facilitator, you can always, when you see that someone is going into deep, you can always take someone out of the session. So you can always just ask to breathe normally again and to calm down. So, of course, there are some contraindications, but it's much less heavy as with psychedelics, where you take something and you go into different states.
So it's like you've got your feet in two different worlds.
Yeah, so it's very often for people safe to explore, because they're still partly here.
So as breathwork gains popularity, are there any particular trends that you're seeing, or any area that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, well, I think, I really hope that breathwork gets much more in the mainstream of the medical health industry. It would be so beautiful if it would be much more, also advised by doctors, or psychotherapists, or that they really see the value of it more. Speaking about stuff is one thing, but to have the body with it, and to create these different pathways through just breath work is really amazing. And I think these things can work together. So it would be very beautiful if we could use it also as before someone gets sick. And I would love to see actually more research about it, because I've had my own experience, which is amazing, and that's why I really believe in it as well. But I would love to have more, like, the research.
And I think that's a really interesting point you raise about it being a preemptive measure. If we think about how stress relates to so many illnesses or so many presentations, to be able to have in your toolbox a way to really regulate the system to be in optimal health so as not to become sick or so as to avoid particular illnesses, I think is a really important point that you raise.
Yeah, I think with almost all the clients, after the feedback I get is that they slept much better, they feel more calm. It's really with the breath work we touch or we get the parasympathetic nervous system activated. So people really get calm. The breathers, they really feel that deep calmness within their body. So they sleep much better. And that really takes also some time before the stress level gets back to normal again. It's for stress. It's a really, really good practice as well.
Katka, what's the most important thing you've learnt on this journey?
That's a beautiful question. Wow. I learned a lot. I really learned a lot. What I learned mostly is that I am convinced, like I say, I am convinced that all these emotions and all these thoughts and traumas, they're somewhere stuck in the body. And with breath work or with different types of body work or also with psilocybin or these things, we can actually let go or find these layers, release them, and come to more of the real you. Like we can do so much. We can do meditation and mindfulness and all these beautiful practices, yoga, and with all that we come to actually I think we become much more closer connection to our heart. And I think what I really love to have the connection from the heart to the heart of someone else. And I find it with all the work what we do in this area, I think that the connection between each other gets so much purer. And I think that's one of the biggest things I learned, to have the connection from the heart. That's something I really value.
Yeah, I can really feel that. I really sense that. And would that be your biggest hope for the listeners? You know, if you had one biggest hope?
Yeah, I think so, because we do so much from the head, and that's actually, it's just one part. And I think the connection from the heart, from heart to heart, is so much deeper. And yeah, and that's where we can be vulnerable. That's where we really can see each other and meet each other.
Mm.
And I find it actually for me is really the way for connecting. And I would love for the listeners to be able to go there to connect more to yourself, and from that self connect to someone else.
So I was just thinking that we talked before the interview about, you know, plans for your work, and you talked about, you know, your wish and desire to offer a women's retreat. And of course, as a sex and relationship therapist, my wish to do this work with couples. Do you know anyone, or are you seeing that? You know, these specific retreats for breathwork with couples or breathwork for women?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And these things, especially because we're during these sessions, we get into the different states, and to really be able to do that with women, only women, it creates, or with your partner, like for example, we create, it's not only the work you do for yourself, but also in the room you create a collective. So it's super interesting to see that during the session, if one of the persons get into process, it can also activate something with someone else. So you create this collective working field, and that's why it's so beautiful to do it with only women or to do it with couples. So what I see after the session is that the stories are different but also similar, and so it's really beautiful to see how we are all connected.
And see that narrative play out for the group.
Yeah. And also with couples, because you really see that they go through their own process, they still have the process together, and afterwards they can share these stories. And there are different stories. There are again the stories from deeper layers, and that creates again a very nice connection with each other in a different way.
Yeah, I can really see that. Are there any particular books or podcasts or films that you could recommend that you've come across on your journey or to explore breathwork further?
Yeah, there are some actually very beautiful books about breathwork. One of them is called Just Breathe. There are some interesting websites. I don't know them on the top of my head, but it's naturalbreathwork.com, I think, something.
We can put it in the show notes. Any websites that you have, we can put that information so listeners can find it.
Yeah, definitely. I can write them down. Also, I think what I would recommend is also podcast with Stanislav Grof about the holotropic breathwork, because it's very interesting. Yeah, there are also some different books about, like, what I read about Eckhart Tolle about the new earth, or the power of now. All these very interesting books about the way of being and how to see life.
And James Nestle's book, Breath,
yes, absolutely.
Fantastic book. And just a reminder that actually we're not taught how to breathe, or that we've somehow forgotten how to breathe, that there's so much mouth breathing and the impact that has on health and well-being.
Yeah.
And Amy Hartley's work is fantastic. She's also doing a program to teach practitioners to go into schools to be able to do breath work with kids, which is such a beautiful offering.
I think that's beautiful, especially when we start doing it with kids already. It's really would be amazing if we can have that in schools. Also, what's a very nice book is Bessel van der Kolk is
Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score.
Exactly. Yeah. It's an interesting book about, and Peter Levine's books.
So Katka, is there anything that you wish I'd asked you?
We talked about so much about the breath, how it works, how a session is, about your experience. So I think we actually covered quite a lot. I think also that there's so much more possible to say about how we work and how we process stuff, and what we can do, how to make our life a little bit easier. But I think for now, with the breath work, I think we covered quite a lot.
And what are your plans going forward? Is there anything that listeners can look out for? Anything that you're doing that you'd like to share?
I love my one-to-one sessions. They're really beautiful and profound. I have small circles, what I do with 4 people by myself, and also bigger circles with 8 people, what I do with a colleague. And I am also working more with breathwork and psilocybin. I really love that combination as well, to go into deeper layers of yourself during the whole day. Yeah, so these are the things I am working on at the moment, and I'm very happy with everyone who comes in and who really wants to explore and to go deeper and feels that he wants to open up. So I'm really happy with everyone who just wants to try.
And where can people find you?
I have my practice in The Hague, close to the sea. And I have I have my website where there's information about the breathwork, what it is, how it works. And through my website, you can find my contact details as well. So if you have any questions, you can always just send me an email or give me a call. And also through Instagram. And I also have my, it's called Katka Jacz. Easy.
Perfect. We can put all of that in the show notes. But thank you so much for your time today, Kat. It's been great chatting, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claire, for the invitation. I really enjoyed it. It was very fun to talk about this big passion of mine, and also, well, you share that, so that's very nice to be able to talk about it. So thank you so much. It was very nice.
Thank you. You've been listening to The Psychedelic Couch. For more episodes, please follow me on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts, and find me on Instagram at The Psychedelic Couch and at Claire Faulkner Therapy, where I will be keeping you up to date on the latest episodes and information surrounding all things therapy, psychedelics, and expanded states.